very socially acceptable in 1930. And let's see, this one is for valor, and I won't be able to get through all of them. Oops, Liberty Magazine, which brings a tear to Don Ross because he didn't make any money selling them either. He got greenie and brownie coupons and never got a prize. But the point is, as you go through, the dates sometimes do remain the same. People basically remain the same. Just the pictures change a little, and we sure hope that all of your pictures for 75 will be pretty and happy ones. Right?
You didn't ask me.
Yeah, I was looking at you, Tom.
You were looking at him.
Well,
He's cross-eyed.
That's our action news. Roger Mudd and CBS
I
News.
broke a resolution.
Coming, and he talked to me. Coming up next, we'll have more action news for this New Year's Day at 11 o'clock. We'll see you then. Good night now.
TV8 Action News is standing by for news breaks at any time. Next scheduled Action News at 11 on 8.
Come and get it, America. McDonald's is fixing breakfast.
Introducing McDonald's Hot Cakes and Sausage, home style, with a patty of pure country pork sausage, lots of syrup, and grade A butter. Or try a delicious Egg McMuffin or a Danish pastry. Your choice of 4 juices, all topped off with a hot cup of coffee. So come and get it, America. A quick, inexpensive breakfast at McDonald's.
McDonald's is now open at 7 in the morning to serve you fresh hot cakes and sausage.
At Lamb Chevrolet, we have the finest used cars in the world. That's because only the very famous people trade in their cars at Lamb. See that car? Little Red Riding Hood owned that car. And Old Mother Hubbard owned that one. Only has 3.5 miles on it, more or less. You'll find just about every make and model at Lamb Chevrolet, so come on out to 24th and National and look them over. See this truck? Well, crossing the Alps, Alexander the Great used this truck.
Oh, come on!
The year 1975 marks a significant milestone for San Diego Federal Savings. It's the 90th year for California's oldest savings and loan association with a federal charter. And for this special occasion, we have a 1975 calendar for you, a colorful 28-page planning calendar, free at all offices of San Diego Federal. Open your account now at San Diego Federal Savings and Loan Association. Safe since 1885.
What is your name, please?
My name is John Outer Space.
And your claim to fame?
I, John Outer Space, am a resident of the planet Mars.
Come on, I know. You're Gary Moore.
Okay, so I am Gary Moore, inviting all of San Diego to join us here on To Tell the Truth. We're where the fun is. TV8 every weeknight at 7:30. Earlier, see TV8 Action News at 5:30 with Tom Lawrence. TV8 San Diego.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Roger Mudd substituting for vacationing Walter Cronkite, and Fred Graham in Washington, Bruce Morton in Washington, Phil Jones in Denver, Bruce Hall in Crescent, Oklahoma, Richard Threlkeld in Grand Canyon Village, Arizona, Ed Bradley in Perquimans County, North Carolina, and Charles Carroll on the road.
Good evening. A federal district court jury in Washington this afternoon found 4 of the 5 Watergate cover-up defendants guilty. 3 of them once were among America's most powerful politicians. Fred Graham reports.
After a 13-and-1/2-week trial and almost 3 days of jury deliberations, the jury suddenly returned with its verdict late this New Year's Day. Jury foreman John Hoffer passed the verdict sheets to the judge. A clerk ordered the 5 defendants to stand and face the bench, and he began to read the verdicts. John Mitchell, accused of conspiracy to obstruct justice, obstruction of justice, and 3 counts of perjury. Guilty on all counts. H.R. Haldeman, also accused of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and 3 counts of perjury. Guilty on all counts. John Ehrlichman, accused of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and 2 counts of perjury. Guilty on all counts. Robert Mardian, accused of 1 count of conspiracy to obstruct justice. Guilty. Kenneth Parkinson, an attorney retained to represent the Nixon Re-Election Committee, and the only defendant not officially associated with the Nixon administration, accused of conspiracy to obstruct justice and obstruction of justice, not guilty on both counts. Mitchell had been accused of planning the Watergate break-in and then using perjury, destruction of documents, and the payment of hush money in an effort to cover it up. Haldeman was accused of using the CIA to block the FBI's investigation of Watergate, of using the $350,000 White House fund as hush money, and of lying under oath. Ehrlichman was charged with helping to raise hush money, urging others to destroy evidence, helping block the FBI's investigation, and lying to the grand jury and the FBI. Mardian was accused only of conspiring in the early stages of the cover-up, of trying to get the Watergate burglars out of jail and encouraging witnesses to lie. Parkinson was accused of passing blackmail messages from the Watergate burglars to the White House. The jury apparently believed his explanation that he was only acting as a lawyer for a client. The courtroom audience gasped its appreciation when Parkinson's acquittal was announced, but Robert Mardian broke down in grief, and Mrs. Haldeman sat with eyes tightly closed. Mitchell, Ehrlichman, and Haldeman showed no emotion. The jurors returned to their hotel for the last time, but obeyed Judge John Sirica's order to say nothing to the press. Mitchell and Mardian slipped away, but Haldeman and Ehrlichman maintained their innocence.
To make a very brief statement, simply to say that there's only one human being in the world who knows to an absolute moral certainty the truth of my innocence or guilt. I know that legally and morally I am totally innocent of each of the charges that's been brought here, and with that certainty I can live with myself, and I can move ahead now to see that as this process continues, the truth ultimately does become known and become understood. I have the full conviction that ultimately it will, and with that I intend to move ahead in the days ahead on the process of appeal within the judicial system.
And I don't think that this verdict was any surprise to any of us who have been in the process in this district as we have been for all these months. As you know, as long ago as last March, when this indictment was delivered, we began to express our very strong and sincere concern about anyone's ability to get a fair trial under the circumstances in this district. And by fair trial, I mean in the political setting and with the massive pretrial publicity and the pervasive publicity. And I think when the record of the jury selection process is finally released, you'll see how terrifically pervasive all this political publicity and the impeachment publicity and so on has been.
Kenneth Parkinson was elated.
Well, obviously I'm thrilled with today's verdict. With respect to me, I've always had faith that this would be the outcome.
Earlier today, Judge Sirica agreed to pose with newsmen for a final picture from this historic trial. The 4 convicted men were released without bond. Sentencing will come later. Mitchell and Haldeman could get 25 years, Ehrlichman 20, and Mardian 5 years. Fred Graham, CBS News, Washington.
The verdict came as President Ford was winding up his skiing vacation. Phil Jones, who's been with the presidential party in Colorado, reports on reaction.
One of the closest advisors to President Ford, who has asked not to be identified, has told CBS News that the verdict appears to be a careful one, that the jury has distinguished between the weak case against Kenneth Parkinson and the strong cases against the other defendants, and that the tapes were obviously devastating to the defense. This same aide says today's verdict establishes that former President Richard Nixon was also involved in the conspiracy and that Mr. Nixon was also guilty of criminal conduct. However, the feeling within the Ford administration is that this verdict will not provoke any more adverse reaction to the Nixon pardon. This presidential aide also feels that today's verdict dispels earlier criticism that the truth could never be ascertained as a result of the Nixon pardon. Asked if there was any chance the convicted Watergate defendants would receive a pardon, the aide said no. It has been the feeling since the Nixon pardon that others involved were not in the same category. Many of President Ford's advisors have argued from the beginning that Mr. Nixon's aides did not have to follow the former president in his cover-up conspiracy, and therefore they should not be entitled to any pardon. Also, under rules of presidential pardons, the convicted defendants would have to serve some of their sentence before they would be eligible for a pardon. The court decision today was summed up this way by President Ford's aide: it was a wholesome verdict for good government. Phil Jones, CBS News, Denver.
A switchboard operator at the Nixon home in San Clemente said the former president would have no immediate comment on the verdict, but would have something to say tomorrow. CBS News will have a special half-hour broadcast on the Watergate verdicts tonight at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time.
What's that, Jack? A second flavor of Digel. New lemon orange. Now there are 2 Digel flavors. At times, you know how tired you get from the taste of some antacids.
Oh, do I?
Not with Digel. In regular mint or new lemon orange. Both work like no plain antacid can.
How's that?
Digel is different. Relieves occasional heartburn, acid indigestion. Gets rid of gas.
Gas?
Gas pressure, fullness. Digel. In regular mint
And new lemon orange. I'll try it.
You know how it is. You're trying to get up the courage to put the eye drops in. Your hand wavers just a little bit. And the drop drops down your face.
Well, that can't happen with Ocusol because Ocusol has a little nose bridge that helps hold it steady until you're ready to open your eye. You can't get the redness out until you get the eye drops in.
Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas has been hospitalized after suffering an apparent stroke. Bruce Morton has the details.
Justice Douglas suffered the stroke yesterday evening, New Year's Eve, while vacationing in Nassau. President Ford first ordered a plane to fly Douglas's doctor there, then a medical plane to bring the justice here. His wife traveled with him. She's been here at Walter Reed today. The medical statement, though, it said Douglas suffered an apparent cerebral vascular accident, which in plain English means an apparent stroke. It said Douglas is resting comfortably in an intensive care unit and is alert. Although his condition is officially categorized as serious, the statement said, his vital signs are stable. Justice Douglas is 76. He's served on the court for 35 years, longer than anybody else in history. For the last 6 years, he's lived with an electronic pacemaker inside his chest. It was put there to regulate his heartbeat, which had been abnormally slow. Douglas is famous for liberal opinions in the court and outside it for outspoken views on everything from conservation to foreign policy. He's an avid outdoorsman, and outdoor living is still very much a part of his life. Douglas's life and his opinions have startled a lot of people over the years, but his nonconformity never bothered the justice. Douglas said a few years ago, "My faith is that the only soul a man has to save is his own." Bruce Morton, CBS News at Walter Reed Army Medical Center.
In Cape Town, South Africa today, Dr. Christian Barnard performed another twin heart transplant. The patient got a donated heart, but his diseased heart was left in place. The hospital said he is in excellent condition. In November, Barnard performed the same operation on a 58-year-old man who is reported to be recovering.
The regeneration of life. How does nature do it? It's simple. Nothing is ever wasted. Everything is used to continue nature's life cycle. Only when the cycle is broken does waste begin. Reynolds Aluminum is concerned about waste. We often carelessly discard things that should be recycled. All it takes is a little effort from each of us. These aluminum cans can be used again, regenerated, saving energy and material. In fact, recycling takes only 5% of the energy it took to make the aluminum from virgin ore. Reynolds started the first aluminum can recycling program. Today, Reynolds is recycling over 1 billion cans a year. Regeneration. If nature can do it, so can we. Reynolds Aluminum, conserving our resources and energy.
The mysterious death last fall of a worker at an Oklahoma nuclear plant has been under investigation by federal officials. And Bruce Hall reports tonight that the investigators now have come up with some disturbing conclusions.
On November 13th, 28-year-old Karen Silkwood, an employee at the Kerr-McGee nuclear facility near Crescent, was killed when this car which she was driving crashed. Her death set off a major investigation. Her union charged these dents in the rear of the car, suggested she was forced off the highway and may have been murdered. However, the FBI and Highway Patrol said they found no evidence of that. The Oil, Atomic, and Chemical Workers Union also charged Ms. Silkwood had become severely contaminated by plutonium at the plant. Now, after more than 6 weeks, Atomic Energy Commission investigators have completed their probe and will release a report as early as next week. The report says plutonium is missing from the plant, that there is a general lack of safety precautions at the plant, and that as many as 80 of the 300 employees have been exposed to some radiation in the past 4 years. The report says that while Ms. Silkwood was contaminated, the contamination did not take place at the plant. The report implies the contamination possibly took place when she came in contact with plutonium that had been intentionally taken from the plant. It says there is no evidence Ms. Silkwood was involved in what the AEC says was the deliberate removal of plutonium from the facility. In Washington, a union spokesman describes what in a union's view might be at stake.
Karen, of course, had made some very serious charges about quality control, which has tremendous ramifications for the whole nation's affairs breeder program. If it is true that these rods were, the quality control was falsified, we possibly could have a major nuclear accident as a result. So those are very serious charges.
Reports vary widely as to how much plutonium is missing. Further word on that may come out next week when the AEC, Union, and Kerr-McGee officials are tentatively scheduled to meet. However, both the Atomic Energy Commission and the company have emphasized that the plant itself poses no radiation danger to the public. Bruce Hall, CBS News, Crescent, Oklahoma.
President Ford today named Housing Secretary James Lynn to succeed Roy Ashe as budget director. The change had been anticipated. Ashe is returning to private life. No successor to Lynn has been announced. The president today also signed the privacy bill, which increases the safeguards on government collection and use of records of individuals. And Mr. Ford announced his 21st veto, the pocketing of a bill which would have increased government per diem and travel allowance for medical treatment. This still leaves more than 90 pieces of legislation on which Mr. Ford must act by the end of the week. Among the bills from the last Congress still awaiting the president's signature is one to return to the Indians some land overlooking a great American natural wonder. Richard Threlkeld reports.
The history books say the Grand Canyon was discovered in 1540, but the history books are wrong. 1,000 years before a troop of Spaniards wandered through here, a small tribe of Indians, the Havasupai, had staked their own quiet claim on the bluffs where now the tourists come to stand and stare. As we have done with Indians, we gradually pushed the Havasupai out of sight and out of mind. Off the bluffs and down a little box canyon, 500 acres of cottonwood and sagebrush, where the last 324 Havasupai live today. It's not quite the Shangri-La it appears if you have to live here. The land's too tired to grow anything, so the Havasupai's main income is the fee they charge the backpackers who like to wander the riverbank. Even though the government's provided the tribe with new prefabricated housing, the Indians are still dependent on tourist handouts. And while we've been busy making the Grand Canyon a national park, the Indians have been quietly trying to recover a share of it, partly because it means more money and partly because they believe that's where they belong. Now it looks like the Havasupai are going to get back at least some of their ancient tribal lands on top of the canyon. And yet now, ironically, a lot of traditional white supporters of Indian land claims don't like this one bit. The bill now before the president would designate some new areas as national park land, but also grant the Havasupai this 185,000 acres along and adjacent to the South Rim, a net loss of about 50,000 acres to the public. The land itself is no good for crops. There's no water and not much good for grazing. But it's full of wild game, herds of mountain sheep and deer, protected until now because there's no hunting in a national park. The hunting lobby was a strong backer of the bill. And any land overlooking a site like this is a developer's dream. So the prospect of a proliferation of the tacky concessions that have already grown up around the park is enough to give the preservationists nightmares, which is why the conservation establishment, normally friendly to Indian claims, fought this one so hard. The Havasupai, they fear, are going to find it hard not to sell out.
Their record has been one that I think did not reflect the attitude of the Indians themselves, but of a few of the rather sharp operators who are helping lead them into what we think is an exploitative course, unsound for them, unsound for parks, unsound for the world as a whole.
The Indians would not be able to lease their new land or do much of anything with it without the approval of the Interior Department, and the government has promised it would draft stringent environmental guidelines. As for the Indians, their advice to the conservationists is not to worry.
We're willing to go along with whatever the congressman says in the bill, and as well as there will be some public hearings, to be equally shared out, and I believe come out with a reasonable solution to it.
Whatever plans the Havasupai may have for this piece of everybody's Grand Canyon that soon may be theirs alone, they haven't said. President Ford will have to decide whether the Indians, the first conservationists, are still the caretakers they used to be. Richard Threlkeld, CBS News, Grand Canyon Village, Arizona.
At a New Year's Day Mass at the Vatican today, Pope Paul made a direct attack on the mafia, calling it a lurking danger that makes everyone tremble. The pontiff denounced what he called a fearful increase of organized crime, with the weapons aimed threateningly at innocent life. It was believed the Pope was referring to a recent rash of kidnappings and murders in Italy.
I teach college, and some days I really get a headache. I used to feel that every pain reliever was just like every other one, until I took Anacin.
Right, Mrs. Loftus. While all three leading pain relievers reach an effective level in your bloodstream in minutes, in the final analysis, only one of them hits and holds the highest level, Anacin. This difference is the extra pain reliever Anacin provides when you have a headache.
I found Anacin works well, and it doesn't upset my stomach.
Anacin for a higher level of pain reliever.
Thousands of angry Egyptian students and workers rioted in Cairo today, protesting low wages and rising prices. Riot police tried to disperse the demonstrators with tear gas, but the protest continued for 4 hours as rioters smashed store windows and overturned buses. Police said 48 persons were arrested. Communist forces have captured the last South Vietnamese military base in Phuoc Long province and now threaten the northern approaches to Saigon. Only the provincial capital of Phuoc Binh remains under government control, and the area commander said he is pessimistic about holding on to it. The British government today bailed out the country's second largest oil company, Burma Oil, with a $775 million loan. In return, the government gets to take over 51% of the company's North Sea oil operations, which are expected to provide almost a third of Britain's current oil needs. Also in London today, Queen Elizabeth awarded knighthoods to 4 men, 85-year-old movie great Charlie Chaplin, novelist P.G. Wodehouse, Roger Bannister, the first to run a 4-minute mile, and West Indian cricket star Gary Sobers. Chaplin reportedly had rejected previous offers of knighthood, but his son-in-law said the ailing entertainer is now very happy to receive it. Around Hertford, North Carolina today, the talk was about hometowner Jim Catfish Hunter, who flew up to the Big Apple last night, signed some papers, and came home with a reported $3,750,000. In return, all he has to do is throw baseballs for the New York Yankees. Ed Bradley reports.
New Year's Eve was a banner day for Catfish Hunter, not the happiest of his life, mind you. That was in the World Series, but a close second. The contract he signed with the Yankees is probably the biggest given to any player in a team sport.
What was the prime consideration, aside from money, in deciding to go with the Yankees?
Well, I think to be a Yankee is a thrill in everybody's heart and mind to be a ball player and play for the Yankees, and that's what I wanted to do. And I always wanted to be here in New York and play. And plus, they got regular grass. They haven't got AstroTurf. Plus, they got a new stadium coming up, which the old stadium, you know, just to get in that was such a thrill that when you walked in there, it felt like cold shivers ran all over you. So it's just great to be in New York with the Yankees.
Been looking for a right-hand pitcher. In Hunter, we have the winner of the 1974 Cy Young Award. I don't think we can do better than that. Congratulations.
What does a guy do to celebrate such an event? Back home in Hertford, North Carolina, there were no welcome home parades in this small town. In fact, you could stand on the main street and count the number of people who passed. But it's not because Jimmy, as they call him here, is not well liked. Down in this part of the woods, most of the men are out hunting deer. And somewhere out there, knee-deep in a swamp, is Jim Catfish Hunter, new millionaire. With their packs of dogs and two-way radios, the hunters stake out the woods, trying to flush out the deer. Down here, Catfish is just one of the boys, as he's been all of his life. His brother, Pete Hunter.
I was talking to my mother-in-law last night about it, signing and all, and I said that, she said, how does it feel to have a millionaire in the family? And I said, I never would know that he is a millionaire knowing him, you know. She said, well, that's good.
You don't think it'll change him?
No, I certainly know that it hadn't changed him today, and if it was me, I think I'd be jumping up and down. I'd forget hunting.
What do you do the day after you've signed a contract for almost $4 million? Well, if it's the last day of the deer hunting season and you happen to be Catfish Hunter, obviously you take out your dogs and hunt those deer, and maybe spend the next few days hunting your dogs.
Ed Bradley, Chinquapin Road, Perquimans County, North Carolina.
Jack Benny, who kidded himself for being a tightwad, has left his treasured Stradivarius violin to the Los Angeles Philharmonic. The bulk of his fortune, estimated in the millions of dollars, will go to his family. His widow, Mary Livingston, is to receive $100,000 plus an income of $10,000 a month.
Today is the day to ask your hands if you should switch to Vaseline Intensive Care Lotion.
Ask which makes them feel better, your hand lotion or Vaseline Intensive Care. Feel Vaseline Intensive Care Lotion go to work to soften and heal rough, dry skin. Smooth. Ask your hands, isn't today the day to switch to Vaseline Intensive Care Lotion? You can feel it heal rough, dry hands.
Are you sure it's just itchy skin?
I was, but the itching got worse. My skin got dry, flaky. Even my students noticed. And then I thought, is it psoriasis? I checked. It was. So I got Tegrin cream. Tegrin felt soothing. My skin got better and kept getting better with Tegrin.
Are you sure it's just itchy skin? It may be psoriasis, so to relieve itching and flaking, get Tegrin medicated cream and feel good about your skin again.
When most of us have a long drive ahead, the question is, when do we get there? But when Charles Kuralt is on the road, his question is, what can we see on the way?
Driving around in California, we're beginning to feel a little self-conscious. The problem is the license plate. Illinois 22053 is all right back in Illinois. Out here, frankly, it's dull, dull, dull.
See, in California and Nevada and neighboring states, by paying a little extra, you can use your license plate to express yourself. No matter whether your name is Leroy or Queena or Womble or Shaky or Johann Sebastian Bach. Oh, I know this goes on elsewhere. On our way west, we've met Pogo from Tennessee and Polly from Nebraska and Tuck from Wyoming. But here, license plates are funky, partner. Real wowzers. See, the car culture's attitude is, maybe it's just a heap, but it's my car. My Olds. And if all I have is a tomato red Volkswagen, at least it's my tomato. And everybody knows the piston engine goes boing, 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 but the Mazda goes You get a lot of upbeat advice out here. Drive safe, smile, dash it, mail it, be best, go forth to glory. Oh, and pride of place, too. A Kentucky colonel from Texas wishes to brag about it, no less than a West Texan from California. Where do you hail from? Fort Wayne? Miami? Lake Tahoe? Or someplace really far out? License plates are the new index of race, creed, and national origin.
This car belongs to you, does it?
Yes, it's my car.
And where do you come from?
I come from Westminster, England.
This is your car, I suppose.
Right.
Oh, it's a nice car.
Thank you.
Where do you come from?
Berlin, Germany.
Oh, yes, we've met Dodie, that's Dodie, and Maxine, that's Maxine. We met Daisy and Steiny and Jenny and Margie and Susie and Bob, though we didn't catch Bob's last name. We have found that license plates cut across the whole spectrum of human personality. The vamp, the rogue, the mogul, the bigot. And of human endeavor. I plan, I purr, I strip, I bike. You'd expect that anybody who would write "In Cod We Trust" on his fish delivery truck would have a fishy license plate as well, and that a banjo player couldn't help advertising his specialty. But this thing has spread to the doctors, the lawyers, the models, the madams, the sailors, and the Shriners, and the Shriners' wives. Even the income tax men, W-2. Even the dog breeders, woof. Even the gamblers. One day in Reno, we hit a royal straight flush, 10 Jack, Queen, King, Ace, and Joker. We knew this thing was beginning to get to us when we started imagining dialogues. Whee you. Hi there, sweetie. Hop in. I got a little cash. We'll have a high time. No, no, Tiger. Buzz. All right, be muley. Well, you get the idea. Probably time to take our Illinois 22053 and get out of here.
Charles Kuralt, CBS News, on the road.
That's the news this Wednesday night. I'm Roger Mudd, CBS News. Good night.
The Congress of the United States has passed, and the President has signed legislation raising the coverage of the Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corporation. Effective immediately, your savings are now insured up to $40,000 by this U.S. government agency. When you see this new emblem at your savings and loan, remember it still means no one has ever lost a penny in an insured savings account.
Acid in your stomach can sometimes splash into your esophagus to give you
heartburn. Oh, do I have heartburn?
Introducing soothing new Alka-Seltzer Gold, the pure antacid you drink. Down it goes, past your esophagus to your stomach to wash heartburn away.
Heartburn? You're all washed up.
New Alka-Seltzer Gold washes heartburn away. For headache with upset stomach, use original Alka-Seltzer with specially buffered aspirin.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this has been the CBS Evening News with Roger Mudd, substituting for Walter Cronkite. Gordon Liddy talks
distant. A major impact of 1974 should have been to make it obvious to elected officials the necessity to give proper priority to the interests of those they represent. As we take a breather and look to 75, there's some glimmer of hope on the horizon. But it will take continued public pressure and pulling together to give it life. It's a brand new year, 1975, fresh and unsullied. KABC-TV sincerely hopes it will be a happy one for you. I'm Gene Webster.
Channel 7, KABC-TV, Los Angeles.
Good evening. I'm Howard K. Smith in Washington. Harry Reasoner's on vacation. These are tonight's headlines. The Watergate cover-up trial jury convicts John Mitchell, H.R. Haldeman, John Ehrlichman, and Robert Mardian. The jury acquits Kenneth Parkinson, the fifth defendant. Supreme Court Justice William Douglas suffers a stroke and is under intensive care at the Walter Reed Army Hospital. And tonight, a comment on the fallen leaders of government during 1974. The jury on the Watergate cover-up trial delivered its verdict today after 15 hours of deliberation over a 3-day period. 4 of the defendants, John Mitchell, H.R. Haldeman, John Ehrlichman, and Robert Mardian, guilty on all counts. Only one defendant, Kenneth Parkinson, the former attorney for the Nixon Re-Election Committee, was found not guilty. Details from ABC's David Shoemaker.
Jury foreman John Hoffer had carried in the verdict inside a brown envelope. And now the 5 defendants stood erect with shoulders squared to hear the decision. The tension was overwhelming as Judge Sirica studied the verdict for many minutes. Then finally, it was read by the judge's longtime clerk, James Capitano. John Mitchell, count 1, conspiracy to obstruct justice, guilty. Count 2, obstruction of justice, guilty. 2 counts of making false declarations to a grand jury, guilty. And perjury before Senator Sam Ervin's Watergate Committee, guilty. Mitchell sagged, then looked down at his attorneys, told them not to take it too hard. H.R. Haldeman was next. Conspiracy, guilty. Obstruction of justice, guilty. 3 counts of perjury before the Senate Watergate Committee, guilty. Haldeman, once Richard Nixon's chief of staff, his alter ego, according to some, stared straight ahead, unblinking. Then John Ehrlichman, already under sentence in the plumber's case, conspiracy, guilty. Obstruction of justice, guilty. Making false declarations to the grand jury, guilty. Ehrlichman's eyes seemed fixed on some point beyond the judge. Robert Mardian, charged with only 1 count, conspiracy, but guilty. And finally, Kenneth Wells Parkinson, a lawyer for the committee to re-elect the president. Count 1, conspiracy, not guilty. Count 2, obstruction of justice, not guilty. A big smile broke out on Parkinson's face. His lawyer reached up to slap his back. Parkinson was still elated as he left the courthouse.
Well, obviously, I'm thrilled with today's verdict. With respect to me, I've always had faith that this would be the outcome. I'd like to thank all of my friends who have supported me through this difficult period. I'd like to thank my wife, Pamela, and one of the greatest lawyers in the country, perhaps in the world, Jake Stein.
At this minute.
It was more than an hour, and a cold front had roared past the courthouse, dumping high winds and sleet on those waiting, before H.R. Haldeman and John Ehrlichman came out to make their statements.
I'd just like to make a very brief statement, simply to say that there's only one human being in the world who knows to an absolute moral certainty the truth of my innocence or guilt. I know, legally and morally, I am totally innocent of each of the charges that's been brought here. And with that certainty, I can live with myself, and I can move ahead now to see that as this process continues, the truth ultimately does become known and become understood. I have the full conviction that ultimately it will, and with that, I intend to move ahead in the days ahead on the process of appeal within the judicial system.
I felt strongly, and my attorneys advised me very plainly, that Mr. Nixon's testimony was absolutely essential to the establishment of our defense. When the judge ruled that we couldn't wait 5 more days to take his deposition, that was, for my money at least, the major turning point in whether or not this verdict was going to be a statement about my innocence or was simply going to be a statement about the evidence that was presented in the courtroom.
John Mitchell and Robert Mardian left the courthouse together, roaring out an underground garage in Mitchell's chauffeured limousine. Sentencing will be delayed for several weeks. Mitchell and Haldeman face up to 25 years in prison, Ehrlichman up to 20, Mardian up to 5. But of course, before any sentences are served, there will be lengthy appeals stretching out for a year or more. But tonight, after 15 hours of deliberation, or by another count, after 2 years and 7 months, the case that began when those 5 men entered the Watergate in the dead of night, that case is finally closed. David Shoemaker, ABC News, Washington.
News of the verdict reached President Ford as he was in his last day of vacation at Vail, Colorado. ABC White House correspondent Tom Jarrell has a report.
Convicted in Washington was completing his winter vacation at Vail, west of Denver. As he has practically every day, the president spent the morning skiing and was back at his temporary White House headquarters when the verdict came in. Aides say the president was watching television and learned of the jury's decision through a news bulletin. About an hour and a half after the verdict, a White House spokesman said President Ford would have no comment, no statement on the outcome. Having faced harsh public reaction to his hasty pardoning of Richard Nixon, the president earlier established his guidelines for handling other Watergate figures. He's on record as being against any blanket pardon for those convicted. Instead, individual requests for pardon must be made through the normal established channels at the Justice Department. White House News Secretary Ron Nessen has said there will be no outright pardons at the president's initiative. The only major Watergate figure to attempt to obtain a pardon has been former counsel Charles Colson. His request has bogged down in the bureaucratic channels and never been put before the president for a decision. Tom Jarrell, ABC News, with the presidential party in Colorado.
Prosecutor James Neal told reporters he is resigning from the special prosecutor's office to go back to his law practice in Nashville. He said he would leave on the first available airplane.
Mary, how much I was Mary? Where's our Rolaids?
Acid indigestion.
And how? Try these. They're good. Good, maybe, but they're not Rolaids.
In this medical report, Rolaids active ingredient was medically recognized safe and effective, taken as directed. Rolaids, with no extra ingredients not intended for your stomach, consumes 47 times its weight in excess stomach acid. Rolaids ingredient, medically recognized, safe and effective.
All right, class. Let's have no more static. I'm getting enough static from this sore throat with my cold.
Now Joan really needs her Listerine lozenges for fast, effective sore throat pain relief. Tests show their special cooling ingredient gives a feeling of relief fast, and their medically proven anesthetic keeps on relieving sore throat pain. Listerine lozenges turn off the static of a sore throat fast.
And just that fast, I'm ready for my class again.
ABC's David Shoemaker has been covering the Watergate affair ever since a special prosecutor was first appointed about over a year ago, and I'd like to ask David some questions. He's at the courthouse now. David, I know that you did not want to prejudice public opinion by saying so, but have you felt and not said so that this verdict would be reached today?
Yes, Howard, I would say that certainly I was not surprised. I don't think anyone in the courtroom was really surprised. Certainly all of the defendants have said quite frankly, although privately to me along the way, that they expected guilty verdicts. Only Robert Mardian, who always seemed outraged at the very idea he was in the courtroom, and Kenneth Parkinson, who seemed to be quite sad that he was there. Those were the only two men who maintained their innocence and predicted that there would be an innocence verdict all along.
David, it took the Teapot Dome scandal 7 years to get through all its litigation in the 1920s. Now, within 2 years of the president admitting there was a problem, President Nixon, we have this climactic event. What else lies ahead in the legal field? Are there other trials to go through aside from the appeals?
Well, there are several trials, and we would expect that grand juries will shortly be returning verdicts. We can't predict, will be returning indictments. We can't predict with any certainty, but we know that several investigations are still underway in the Special Prosecutor's Office. One is the investigation of Maurice Stans, who was the chairman of the Finance Committee to re-elect the president, the man who collected so much of the money for the committee to re-elect the president's operations. There is still the investigation underway into the affairs of Charles B.B. Rebozo, Richard Nixon's longtime friend, and that, of course, could have terrible ramifications for Richard Nixon. And then finally, there is the trial already scheduled in March of John Connally, the former Secretary of the Treasury.
David, the unique thing about this Watergate thing, one of the unique things was that a president taped his intimate conversations dealing with a crime. Had he not done that peculiar thing, could this verdict have been reached today with only John Dean's evidence?
We'll never know that, will we? Certainly the prosecutors and the defense counsel both think that it was the major element. We heard hours and hours of testimony from the stand, and James Neal, near the very end of his final rebuttal and closing argument, told the jurors if there is any doubt in their mind, they should ask for two tapes. The tape of June 23rd, just a few days after the break-in, when the president and H.R. Haldeman discussed using the Central Intelligence Agency to block the FBI investigation, and the second tape of March 21st, when the two men, in the presence of H.R. Haldeman and John Dean and the president, all discussed the $1 million ransom demands of Howard Hunt. Neal said, listen to those two tapes and you'll know what to do. Last night, after asking for all of the tapes, the jury finally settled for and asked for just those two tapes. And last night, as a very last item of business, they listened to those two tapes, and this morning it was quite clear that vibrations came out of that jury room that a verdict was coming in quickly.
Were you surprised at the speed with which the jury dealt with this thing? After all, there was 17 complicated counts of perjury, obstruction of justice, and so on, and they talked only for 15 hours before reaching a verdict.
Yes, I think I was surprised that it happened as quickly as it did. I thought that it would probably take another day or two. They started out going that way. As I said last night, they asked for all of the tapes. The very first night of deliberations, they asked for all of the testimony as it related to John Mitchell, not only Mitchell's testimony, but the witnesses against them. And they were going at it the very long and thorough way. Excuse me, but they were turned down by Judge Sirica, who in effect threw them back on their own resources, their own recollections. And when the jury realized that it wasn't going to be able to review and retry the entire case, I guess that made them come up with some very quick decisions. The unity on this jury is something. Of course, the defense counsel always hopes to provoke an argument, a hung jury, to make one man angry and hold out one woman. But this jury had always stayed together very well, and with John Hoffer, the ex-policeman, as the foreman, they obviously ran a very tight ship. And they were under a lot of pressure, too, that the judge had put on them. We've talked about that in the past. They were cut off from television, newspapers, even phone calls from their families, which made them have nothing much else to do but think about this verdict.
Well, David, I'm sure that, like James Neal, you, too, would like to take the first airplane out of Washington after living with this thing for so long. Thank you very much. We'll have more news in a moment.
I believe in Excedrin because I've tried both regular aspirin and Excedrin for headache. And Excedrin's really done a better job for me. In fact, Excedrin did a better job in a research study at a big city hospital among hundreds of people with pain other than headache. In this research, the doctors reported Excedrin was significantly more effective than the regular aspirin tablet. Try Excedrin, the extra strength pain reliever. I think you'll believe it's better, too.
Are you sure it's just itchy skin?
I was, but the itching got worse. My skin got dry, flaky. Even my students noticed. And then I thought, is it psoriasis? I checked. It was. So I got Tegrin cream. Tegrin felt soothing. My skin got better and kept getting better with Tegrin.
Are you sure it's just itchy skin? It may be psoriasis, so to relieve itching and flaking, get Tegrin medicated cream and feel good about your skin again.
Supreme Court Justice William Douglas is in serious condition tonight in Washington's Walter Reed Hospital after suffering a stroke while on vacation in Nassau. Douglas, who is 76, has served on the High Court since 1939, longer than any other Supreme Court justice in U.S. history. We have details from ABC's Bill Gill.
His doctors say that, barring a possible setback, Justice Douglas will recover. The justice and his wife, Kathy, were flown here to Walter Reed Hospital earlier today aboard a special Air Force medical plane at the orders of President Ford. The justice has been wearing a pacemaker to regulate his heartbeat for the past several years to correct what is described as a low blood pressure condition. Today, his colleague and close friend, Chief Justice Warren Burger, says that Justice Douglas is now resting comfortably, that he's alert, conscious, and optimistic. Officially, his condition is described as normal, following a severe but not critical vascular stroke. Bill Gill, ABC News, Walter Reed Army Hospital in Washington.
President Ford named James Lynn, his housing secretary, to be his new budget director today. Lynn will succeed Roy Ashe, a holdover from the Nixon administration who's going back to private business. Lynn will continue as housing secretary until he's confirmed in the budget post by the Senate, probably late in January. Australian naval vessels arrived in the city of Darwin today with supplies and manpower to help restore vital services destroyed in last week's storm. Authorities said the 4 ships that arrived today will be joined later by 8 others and will probably stay in Darwin for at least 3 months. ABC's Jim Bennett is in Darwin, where a massive evacuation is continuing.
We're going to give priority to the following groups: mothers and their children. And please do not push, because there is plenty of room.
This is in the best Australian tradition, women and children first in evacuating Darwin. In less than a week after Cyclone Tracy leveled the city of 43,000, more than 20,000 had been airlifted out to other parts of the country. Most of them left looking back with horror on a disastrous Christmas Day and forward to an uncertain New Year.
How do I feel? Shattered. Lost.
How do you feel about leaving Darwin?
Well, I feel very bad about it.
Do you expect to come back, ma'am?
Yes, I hope so.
Certainly 1975 poses many major questions and problems for Darwin. It will take months, if not years, just to clear away the debris. The Australian government is forming a Darwin Reconstruction Commission to plan the rebuilding of a new cyclone-proof city. But the question in many minds is whether it is worth it.
I can't imagine ever living here again.
Well, we won't stay indefinitely, but we'll stay to see it sort of rebuilt to a certain extent so we can sort of help. Somebody's got to help. If you thought everybody just tears off, well, there's nothing left at all. There's nothing worth working for.
Essential services such as water and electricity are slowly being restored on a makeshift basis. The main pipeline is now the favorite watering hole for those who have stayed behind. These hardships seem to have brought the remaining Darwinians together in an appeal to their adventuresome nature. How do you feel about Darwin now?
Oh, well, I'm quite prepared to come back again, or we're going to stay until they force us to go out. But everything's fine. We're all happy and bright now.
Your plans are to remain in Australia for the rest of your life?
In Darwin, I hope.
The tragedy of Darwin will not soon be forgotten by the Australians. It's extremely unlikely that it will ever grow again to its former size. What probably will rise from this rubble is a city of 10,000 or so, designed to withstand natural disasters like Cyclone Tracy. Jim Bennett, ABC News in Darwin.
In Japan today, a bus carrying holiday skiers went off a mountain road about 100 miles north of Tokyo, plunged into a lake where it floated for a while, then sank. 36 passengers and the driver escaped, but 23 others were drowned. Fort Lauderdale police early this morning used an armored anti-riot vehicle to disperse some 1,500 New Year's celebrants who began pelting the police with rocks and beer cans. 42 people were arrested. It was the 3rd consecutive New Year's clash in Fort Lauderdale. If inflation and recession have gotten you down and you're thinking of a quick trip to Florida to get away from it all, you won't be alone by any means. ABC's Charles Murphy tells why.
At Jewfish Creek in the Florida Keys, cars, campers, and trailers backed up for miles. Northerners are scrambling south in droves to get some of that Florida sunshine and some sand in their shoes. Recession or no recession. Campsites are booked full, and many who came to the Keys had to be turned away.
Did he have some space?
No, he didn't. He said probably no place there. Have to go back north. He's got maybe one spot, and if not, I think we'll be heading back.
It seems that everyone had the same idea about the same time. Let's hop in the old camper and go down to Florida where it's warm. No one will be there because there's a recession, you know. But they were here, and they came from all over.
We're from Pennsylvania.
Montreal.
Fargo, North Dakota. How'd you come down? We drove down. A surprising number came from Michigan, among them unemployed auto workers. They draw sub-pay, and they don't have to work.
This weather, after 29 inches of snow up there in Michigan, I'm ready for this.
Well, you might as well be unemployed here as up there in the winter.
Sure, really. I mean, I'm getting by.
So far, it's a holiday phenomenon. Bookings drop off sharply after the end of the year. But even if business doesn't hold through the rest of the winter, things are better for the tourist industry than last year during the gasoline shortage. Even the big Miami Beach hotels are doing better than expected. Some are filled, though many still have rooms. Disney World has been doing a land office business. One day last week, the crowd set a record. More than 70,000 came to see the Magic City in the swamp. Disney laid on a bigger parade for the huge holiday crowds. In the land of make-believe, you can forget your troubles. Back in the 1930s, Will Rogers said Americans would be the first people in history to go to the poorhouse in an automobile. But times have changed. Now they're going to Florida first in a Winnebago. Charles Murphy, ABC News, in Florida.
Boston's school superintendent today postponed the reopening of racially troubled South Boston High School from tomorrow until next Monday because, he said, of secret information he's got up from the police about potential violence. Superintendent William Leary said he will ask the courts to determine whether the school should be permanently closed.
How the West Was Won. An unforgettable motion picture with an outstanding cast of stars. How the West Was Won.
Sunday night at 7:30, 6:30 Central, here on ABC.
The North American beaver. Hunted to near extinction in the early 1600s, the lure of its lustrous fur stimulated the exploration of North America. The beaver faces yet another struggle for survival in the sub-zero temperatures of northern Saskatchewan. Join Captain Cousteau and the men of the Calypso as they follow the uncertain destinies of the beavers of the North Country.
Monday night at 8, 7 Central.
How do you wake up America?
With Bill Butel, Stephanie Edwards, and Peter Jennings. With news and commentators, information and entertainment. How do you wake up America? AM America, that fresh new morning show from ABC, starts January 6th at 7 a.m.
Catch the action on ABC 75. When you need help, you call the police. When the police need help, they call SWAT. A Miami-based task force fights crime in the posh resorts and remote islands of the Caribbean. Stacy Keach stars in Caribe. Robert Blake is Tony Beretta, a cop you'll never spot till you need him. Beretta. SWAT. Caribe. Beretta. The action on ABC 75.
Jim Catfish Hunter celebrated his acquisition of the fattest baseball contract in history by going deer hunting today near his home in Hertford, North Carolina. Last night, the 28-year-old pitcher was signed by the New York Yankees, ending his status as a free agent. His 5-year contract will earn him $740,000 a year. Queen Elizabeth's New Year's Day honors list cited some famous and some obscure individuals today. Among those knighted were actor Charlie Chaplin, novelist P.G. Wodehouse, and Roger Bannister, the first man to run the 4-minute mile. Also honored was Robert Brown, manager of the Europa Hotel in Belfast, which has been bombed repeatedly by the Irish Republican Army. The New Year in London was celebrated in traditional and in new ways. ABC's Hilary Brown attended a celebration where the attraction was music of nearly half a century ago.
Here's a number from the vintage years past, and it's called Nagasaki.
After the worst year since the war, the outlook for the next one in Britain hasn't been so bleak since 1931. Even government ministers are forecasting economic hardships in 1975 unequaled since the Depression. That may be one reason for the recent success of the Pasadena Roof Orchestra, a semi-professional group of part-time London musicians that specializes in the sound of the late 20s and 30s. Not a stylized, camped-up version, but the real thing, using the arrangements of 45 years ago. This year they came into their own with an engagement at Biba's trendy Rainbow Room in Kensington, itself a faithful restoration of the original Rainbow Room of the 30s, where people danced their troubles away and sang about pie in the sky, hot ginger and dynamite in places like Nagasaki.
They kissy and huggy nice. By Jingo, it's worth the price. Back in Nagasaki, where the fellas Judy Baggy and the women Ricky Wacky Woo.
And for the first time since its heyday, the Rainbow Room was packed, mostly with people much too young to remember the bad old days. They rang in 1975 as though the 30s were only yesterday. With runaway inflation and rising unemployment on the near horizon here, the 30s could be back tomorrow. If this is so, the musicians of the Pasadena Roof Orchestra, and in real life they're truck drivers, accountants, engineers, and bakers, may be among the few who will survive in 75.
With all this depression and everything else we're going through, possibly so. And the outlook doesn't look too good for 1975, but I think the orchestra will be quite different in that respect. I think we're looking forward to a very successful year.
When the Pasadena Roof Orchestra started, they thought their Depression music would be an antidote to the times, what the public needed. It may become an expression of the times, what people have actually got. Happy New Year anyway. This is Hilary Brown at the Rainbow Room in London for ABC News.
I'll have tonight's comment in a moment.
Electric shaving is fast and easy, except when you want a really close shave. Because to get a really close shave, you have to go over and over your skin. To help end this situation, there's Williams' Electric Shave. Its special formula makes your whiskers stand up, so you can shave off your beard without having to go over and over the same spots. Electric Shave. And now there's new Electric Shave Tender Face for men with tender faces. Electric Shave!
I know it's a big job getting settled in a new place, honey. Just don't expect to get everything done at once.
You're right, Mama. Things have been hectic, and sometimes I've had trouble falling asleep.
Everyone does once in a while.
I know. I remember you're telling Dad, Frank, take Sominex. And that's what I do. And Sominex really does help make me drowsy, so I can get to sleep, and with a lot less trouble.
Well, that's Sominex for you.
Sominex. It helps take the trouble out of falling asleep.
A unique feature of the just expired year 1974 was the epidemic I can think of no precedent for of fallen leaders. Among modern nations, there comes to the mind only Canada and Sweden that ended the year with the same leaders they began it with. Elsewhere, from the U.S. over to Greece and Israel on one side of the world and to Japan on the other, the leaders went. And not in most cases in regularly scheduled elections, but by popular impatience that forced resignations. Clearly, our kind of people were more desperately unhappy with leadership than in any year I can think of in this century. And with the sole exception of Chancellor Schmidt of Germany, opinion polls say that people are not very pleased with the new leaders they've got. Curiously, there may lie a grain of saving thought in that for the new leaders. The single main source of discontent is the inaction against the roaring inflation that has dragged us into a recession. Inflation means simply that people and nations are living beyond their means, and the allegedly unpopular remedy is cut back standards to fit your means and get control of things. Well, if the new men are unpopular anyhow, why not try the allegedly unpopular course of really biting the bullet and instituting sacrifices as a policy to recover? Who knows, unpopular measures, if purposeful, may be the way to popularity. In any case, it's more dignified to be kicked out because you acted rather than because you didn't. That's tonight's news and a comment. I'm Howard K. Smith. Good night.
This has been the ABC Evening News with Howard K. Smith and Harry Reasoner, Monday through Friday in color. This has been a presentation of ABC News.
One of Mama's old girlfriends returns to town and makes a play for Clifton on That's My Mama, tonight at 8 o'clock. Christy Love faces a syndicate hitman. Teresa Graves stars tonight at 10, here on ABC.
You know what's coming up now? Your favorite game show. But I'm not going to play games with you at all. I'm just going to tell you that 3 8-ounce glasses of milk a day provide you with over half your recommended daily allowance of protein, which is a good reason to run out to the kitchen and pour yourself one of those glasses of milk right now. So go do it. That way, by the time you get back, you'll already be ahead of the game.
Photomat wants to show you some pictures you never saw before. Pictures most film developers don't give back. Maybe you overexpose them or underexpose them, but that doesn't make them any less precious to you. So Photomat has a no-fault photo plan. We print every printable picture. And if you don't like them, we'll reprint them or refund your money, no matter whose fault it is. Because at Photomat, your photo matters.
I'm Pocky's Papa's Taco. We hope that will please you. Papa Taco. Papa Taco, 29 cents. Drive through.
See the Watergate decision at 11.
These people, dressed as they are, come from all over the United States to make deals here in the marketplace of America. Let's make a deal. And now, here's America's top trader, TV's big dealer, Monty Hall.
Thank you very much. Thank you and welcome. My. Stop that back there. She saw herself on television. Would you settle down? Now, I've seen people jump up and down, but when somebody back there sees herself on television, goes crazy. Did you like what you saw? Well, I didn't. I fainted when I saw that. This is Let's Make a Deal, where they faint even back there in the deep audience.